what is intuition, and how do we know the difference between introspecting and having an intuition?
You know, this is actually the question's not hard, and the answer isn't hard, but Swamiji himself, in many talks that he gave over the years, would say, I think, to help us be deeply respectful of just how strong the ego can be, just what a pull Maya, delusion, and duality, this natural state of the human condition, pulling us out of our true selves, pulling us away from that point of intuitive perception, which is also called intuition. But it's so hard at times. He was always respectful of that. So I think each of us needs to be as well. Intuition really implies those moments where we are completely centered, completely in tune with, completely focused on, aware of that point of intuitive perception of the divine. It's those moments where we know that we are in a place to directly receive divine guidance, divine answers, where our own ego, where our likes, our dislikes, our desires have been calmed and stilled enough that we can actually hear what God is asking of us. It's been told to us in so many ways. Jesus said, "Be still and know that I am." He also said, "For those who have ears to hear." Whoever it was that sent this lovely little note to me many years ago, "Be still and let God answer through you," means all of the techniques that we've learned, all of the time that we practice drawing all of the energy that's so inclined for human beings to go in a downward and outward flow, to bring that energy, to draw that energy in and up until it reaches the heart chakra and opens that chakra and allows divine energy, our true connection with the divine, our natural state. But we've moved so far away from that for so many lifetimes. So the practices that we do that allows that energy to not just be drawn inward, but to be calmed, to be neutralized, is a word that we use, so that the energy is naturally doing what it is meant to do, flowing through the heart and up to the point between the eyebrows, through the medulla, to the point between the eyebrows, so that we can hear and receive God's will. That's very different than using our minds, even though I'll bet many of you have very great minds. And we learn a lot with those minds. You know, the very mind that keeps us drawn out, that keeps us looking for solutions, satisfaction, happiness, love, in this outward direction, is the same mind that is constantly saying to us, this is what we get in human incarnations that we have not had until we have a human birth that says, there's got to be more. I feel it. There's something that will actually bring me true happiness, true joy, true deep calmness, contentment, all of that. And no matter how good it gets in the world, even when we have those moments of feeling so happy, so satisfied for a moment in the way that we human beings can, and so much of it, let's face it, it's lovely, or we wouldn't keep going after those same experiences. They're not all bad, but still they leave us wanting. And that's what the mind does. It keeps saying, follow me. This will satisfy you. That will satisfy you. Much of it's good. This is how we get educated, even our formal education. This is often how we relate to each other in beautiful ways. It's how we acquire so many possessions that are lovely and wonderful to have. But as long as it's in the material world, as long as it's of the mind, there's always something tugging on us that's saying to us in a very inward and focused place, maybe particularly when we're meditating, there's more. This isn't quite it. It leaves us just a little hungry. Those things that come to us through intuition, they are fully and completely satisfying. People often ask, but how do I know? Which is what Swamiji was saying. It can be very hard because Maya has a hold on all of us. If it didn't, there would be nothing holding us in these human bodies. But when we have those intuitive moments, those moments of intuitive perception, we know, and any of you who are listening who have had this know precisely what I'm talking about. We know something in that moment beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's beyond doubt. It doesn't come the way the mind does when it's introspecting. When the mind says, I really think this is right. I really think it's right. And then, either in that moment, or minutes later, or an hour later, or days later, are you sure? It says, are you sure? Wait a minute, maybe not. This is perfect for me. But what if all that questioning? There's no questioning when we have moments of true inspiration. And if you haven't had that yet, you will, because it's your natural state, it's your birthright. If you're meditating, if you're practicing, if you're chanting, if you're doing all you can do to attune yourself to this vibration of these masters, you will have those moments where you know. You may never speak them to another soul, or sometimes you might. Sometimes you may find yourself saying, I had an inspiration, and you'll know it. And there's no arrogance in it, because it's not about you. It's not about you and your ego. It's grace, where God himself has come to you and shown you the truth. Swamiji said, when you're not sure, test it. If you feel you've been inspired, take a little step in that direction. Then stop. Does it still feel right? If it still feels absolutely right, take another few steps. You can use this in business, in relationships, in every decision that you're making, because It's so much better when we're not making the decisions. I remember years ago, it was in 1999, and I had moved to Baltimore for a lot of reasons. I lasted 5 years there, and then I had to come back to California. Really, I didn't know it, but Master was bringing me back so that I could move into the Ananda Palo Alto community, which I did immediately, and I've been here ever since. But I didn't know that at the time. And I was leaving what looked to so many like a perfect life situation. And it was beautiful. I had one of the largest medical practices in the United States, and honestly, it felt like a mutual love affair with myself and most of those 6,000 patients. That's a lot. And I was in a relationship that was lovely. I was living on 100 acres of land in a 10,000 square foot home that was a Maryland historic landmark home. Friendships were abounding. I could just go on and on. It looked perfect. But I knew it was time to come back here. I felt it. I had no idea why. But everybody in my life just couldn't believe that I was making this decision. Literally, people asked me if I thought I should see a psychiatrist. I mean, they really did. Don't you want to talk to somebody about this first? And I kept saying to them, no, I've never been so sure of something. And I hadn't. It had come to me, it was time to leave, and I knew it beyond a doubt. But then, from their anxiety, doctors, nurses, friends, everybody, what are you going to do? Shanti, what are you going to do when you leave here? What will you be doing back in California? Have you already joined another medical group? Do you know where you'll be living? All of the questions that people like to answer. And I just kept stopping and saying to everybody, I have no idea, and I don't want to figure it out. I want to take myself to a place where I can get quiet enough and still enough to hear what God wants me to do. And that's exactly what I did. I took a full year of seclusion. I was driving around, I was stopping in different camping places and simple places to be. But for 1 year, I barely spoke to anybody. I listened. I wrote, I chanted, I prayed, I meditated, and I listened. And when I walked into the Ananda Palo Alto community, it was perfectly clear. Perfectly. This is why I'm here. So it's moments like that. 20 years ago, I've never looked back. I've never questioned it. It's one of the most beautiful, I was going to say decision, but I didn't make a decision. With God's grace, I knew to get still and get quiet. And that's what it takes. And then Swamiji says, watch your friends, watch their reactions to you. Watch, do people say to you, wow, you look so great. What's happened to you? They start asking you questions on the physical plane. Did you cut your hair? Did you get a new shawl? What they're seeing is God's grace flowing through you. If people keep coming up to you, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Or you find yourself having hard times with people. These are signs. Listen to them. Don't push through them. These are the ways that we have to listen. You know, God speaks to us. Whispers from eternity, Master called it. It's not very often that God comes barging into our life and screams at us. He wants us to listen to attune ourselves and hear those whispers. I hope that answered your question.